When we talk about having a business meeting with God, the first thing we have to get clear on is this. You don't come into that kind of meeting casually. You don't just wake up, brush your teeth, scroll through your phone, and then toss up a quick, "God bless my plans." That's not a meeting. That's a drive through prayer. When you're meeting with God, the creator of the universe, the one who wired you for purpose, destiny, and divine impact, you prepare like you're meeting with the CEO of the cosmos. Because you are. Think about how you would approach a high-level business meeting with someone who has the power to fund your dreams, open impossible doors, or align you with people who could change your life in an instant. You wouldn't wing it. You'd come with an agenda, a pitch deck, a notebook, and probably a little anxiety too. But why? Because you understand the weight of the meeting. You understand that your posture, your preparation, and your intentionality all matter. So why would you bring anything less when you're meeting with God? Preparation isn't just about being organized, it's about positioning your heart. When I prepare to meet with God, I don't just make a list of things I want. I quiet my mind. I let go of my own timeline. I come to Him with a mixture of expectation and humility. I'm not here to tell Him how to run the world or my life. I'm here to hear strategy, wisdom, correction, and direction from the one who sees the whole chessboard, not just the next move. And let me tell you something, this isn't religious routine, this is real, life strategy. I don't set a meeting with God because it's a nice spiritual habit. I do it because I can't afford not to. I don't have the luxury of trying to figure things out on my own when the one who already has the solution is willing to meet with me. It's not about being mystical, it's about being smart. It's about spiritual intelligence. Why would I go into business blind when I can sit down with the God who sees the end from the beginning? Now, when I come into that space, I bring everything. My ideas, my frustrations, my Excel sheets, my prayers, my confusion, my half-baked visions. But I also bring a clean slate. I say, God, here's what I've got. But what do you see? Because more than I want to be right, I want to be aligned. More than I want a yes, I want your best. This is not about impressing God with how much you've prepared. It's about honoring Him enough to prepare at all. You wouldn't walk into a boardroom in your pajamas with no plan, no focus, and no clarity. Why? Because it communicates you don't value the meeting. So when I step into my business meeting with God, I get my spirit dressed. I show up with intention. I'm not playing small. I'm not checking a box. I'm showing up like a son, like a king in training, like a steward of heaven's resources who's ready to do business for the kingdom. And when you start treating those moments like real meetings, something shifts. Your prayers change, your posture changes, your results change, because you're no longer begging for blessings. You're receiving divine strategy from the one who authored your purpose. So the next time you go into that meeting, don't just show up, prepare to show up. When I sit down with God in that sacred space of a business meeting, I come with a vision. I bring the ideas, the goals, the things I've been dreaming about and working on. I've spent time strategizing, maybe even fasting, seeking wise counsel, researching, grinding. But here's the thing, I bring all of that, and then I put it on the table and say, God, this is my vision. Now I need you to review it. See, a lot of people treat God like a stamp of approval. They say, God, I've already decided what I'm doing. Now bless it. But that's not how kingdom partnership works. That's not a meeting, that's a monologue. A real business meeting with God means you don't just present your plan, you submit it. You open your hand and say, God, if this isn't it, I'm willing to let it go. If this isn't the time, I'm willing to wait. If this isn't aligned, I want you to redirect it. And I know that's not always easy, especially when you've poured yourself into something, when you've invested time, money, energy, emotion, when you've got people counting on you, or when your ego is tied up in the outcome. But here's what I've learned. I'd rather let go of a good idea and make room for a God idea. I'd rather take a temporary loss than build something God never assigned me to. You know what's dangerous? Building success around something that's outside of God's timing. You might get what you want, but you'll be exhausted trying to sustain it. You'll be frustrated trying to force it to grow. That's the trap of self-reliance. When you refuse to surrender your plan, you inherit the weight of carrying it alone. But when you submit your vision for review, God shows you what you couldn't see. He reveals blind spots, He exposes hidden risks, He uncovers motives, and sometimes He brings clarity you didn't even know you needed. It's like handing over your business plan to the ultimate advisor, the one who not only knows the market, but created the market. He doesn't just know what's trending, He knows what's timeless. So when He says, "Not now," or "Not this way," He's not shutting you down. He's setting you up. Sometimes the rejection is actually redirection. Sometimes the delay is actually development. And if you're wise enough to stay submitted, you'll start to see that His edits are upgrades. Now, that doesn't mean you don't dream big. That doesn't mean you don't come to the table with passion and clarity. I come bold, with vision that stretches my faith. I come ready to move, but I always leave room for God to do what only He can do, to refine, to shift, to override, and yes, even to delete. Because I trust that if He removes it, it's because He has something better aligned with my calling, my character, and my capacity. And the more I practice this, the more I realize it's not just about what I'm building. It's about who I'm becoming in the process. When I submit my plans, I grow in trust. I grow in obedience. I grow in patience. And when the green light comes, when God says, "Go," I can move with confidence, not fear, because I know I didn't force it. I followed it. So if you're walking into that business meeting with God, don't just bring your pitch, bring your willingness to pivot. One of the biggest shifts I had to make in my walk with God and in my business life was learning to listen more than I speak. I used to come into prayer and strategy time with a full agenda. I had a list. I had goals. I had problems I wanted solved. I'd talk and talk and talk. And then when I felt like I got it all out, I'd close in prayer and move on with my day. But somewhere along the way, I started realizing that I wasn't having a meeting. I was giving a monologue. I wasn't creating space for God to speak. I was treating Him like a consultant I just needed to check in with, not like the source of strategy itself. Let me say this, it's not wrong to talk to God. In fact, He invites us to bring our desires, our frustrations, our plans, our needs. But if all we do is talk, and never pause long enough to listen, we're missing the most important part of the meeting. God already knows what we're bringing to the table. The question is, are we quiet enough to hear what He wants to bring to ours? Listening to God doesn't just mean hearing an audible voice. Most of the time, it won't be that dramatic. It means being still in His presence. It means sitting with the Word and letting it read you. It means paying attention to those gentle impressions, those nudges in your spirit, those moments of clarity that rise up when you stop trying to figure everything out in your own mind. Listening isn't passive, it's powerful. It's where revelation happens. It's where direction becomes clear. It's where alignment is forged. In business, people spend thousands of dollars hiring consultants to sit with them, review plans, and give high-level feedback. You better believe when that consultant speaks, they stop talking and lean in. They take notes, they reflect. Why? Because they value the insight, and yet, so often, we go into God's presence like we're the expert in the room. We keep talking, keep planning, keep pushing, and then wonder why we're confused, anxious, or spinning our wheels. Sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is be quiet long enough to receive, and I know we live in a world that doesn't like silence. We're surrounded by noise, input, data, distraction, but the kingdom doesn't move at the world's pace. If you want to access heaven's downloads, you've got to make space for them. You've got to be intentional about shutting out the noise so you can actually hear the voice that matters most. One time I went into prayer with a full list of things I needed guidance on: marketing plans, team issues, a major investment decision. I started my usual routine, but this time I felt a deep prompting, "Be still." So I stopped, and for the next 45 minutes I said nothing. I didn't beg, I didn't strategize, I just sat. And in that silence, I received more clarity in my spirit than I had in weeks. God started highlighting scriptures I hadn't thought about, showing me where fear was masking as strategy, and giving me peace about a decision I had been wrestling with for too long. That meeting changed my direction, not because I talked my way into it, but because I listened my way into it. So I've learned that when I show up to meet with God, I bring my thoughts, my plans, my goals, and then I shut my mouth. I ask God, "What do you want to say?" And then I wait, because what he has to say is always more important than anything I could possibly ask. When most people come to God with a business idea or a dream, they're often just looking for a blessing. God, bless this plan, bless this product, bless this opportunity. And while there's nothing wrong with asking for God's blessing, that can't be the only thing you're after. Because if all you want is a blessing, but you're not asking for wisdom, for insight, for strategy, then you're asking God to back something you haven't even invited him to build with you. That's not partnership. That's spiritual wishful thinking. See, God isn't just here to rubber stamp your plans like some divine notary public. He's the architect, the master strategist, the one who sees the hidden things, the roadblocks, the timing, the connections you need that you don't even know exist yet. So when I have a business meeting with God, I don't just come asking him to say yes to what I've already decided. I ask him to lead the process. I want his wisdom more than his stamp. You can have a good idea, but if you don't have God's insight, that good idea can turn into a burden real fast. Just because something looks profitable doesn't mean it's purposeful. Just because it's trending doesn't mean it's aligned with your calling. You could be working hard on the wrong thing, at the wrong time, with the wrong people, in the wrong season, and still be asking God to bless it. That's not how the kingdom works. In the kingdom, purpose precedes profit, vision precedes visibility, and wisdom precedes winning. So instead of just saying, "God, make this work," I've learned to ask, "God, what's the strategy? What do I need to see that I'm not seeing yet? Is this the right time? Who do I need to connect with for this to unfold the way you want it to?" I treat that time like I'm sitting with the ultimate executive strategist, because I am. And I don't leave the meeting until I get clarity. Not always on the whole picture, but on the next step. That next step is critical. That's where obedience begins. That's where momentum is born. There have been times when I was ready to launch something that looked airtight on paper. The numbers made sense, the marketing was solid, the team was in place, but when I brought it to God and asked for strategy, I didn't get a green light. I got silence, and in that silence I learned that no peace is also an answer. God wasn't trying to punish me, he was protecting me. He saw what I couldn't see, and because I asked for wisdom instead of just blessings, I avoided walking into something that would have drained my time, my money, and my energy. Now I make it a discipline. When I'm in that meeting with God, I don't just pray vague prayers. I ask targeted questions. I open my Bible. I listen in my spirit. I wait for confirmation. Sometimes he answers through a scripture. Sometimes it's a strong sense in my gut. Sometimes he sends someone into my life who speaks the very thing I've been wrestling with. But no matter how he answers, it always leads to strategy I didn't have before. That's why I don't treat these moments with God like rituals. I treat them like board meetings. I show up expecting to leave with direction, and I always ask him, not just to bless what I'm doing, but to help me do what he's blessing. Every real business meeting has receipts. You walk out with notes, minutes, takeaways, and next steps. So why do we treat our business meetings with God any differently? When I go into that space with Him, whether I'm sitting in silence, praying, reading the Word, or just listening in stillness, I come ready to document, I bring a journal, I open up a note on my phone. I make space to write down what I believe God is saying, because divine instruction is too precious to leave to memory. I can't tell you how many times God has whispered something to me, an idea, a warning, a solution, and if I didn't write it down, I would have lost it in the noise of the day. The enemy would love nothing more than to distract you out of what God deposited into your spirit. That's why documenting isn't just good practice. It's spiritual warfare. It's a way of honoring what God says. It's you saying, God, I value your input enough to capture it, to review it, to live by it. Some of the most powerful strategies I've ever received didn't come in the middle of a mastermind or a workshop. They came in quiet moments with God, and they came in fragments. One line here, a question there, a scripture that jumped off the page, a phrase that stirred something in my gut. When I wrote them down, they didn't always make sense right away. But later, when the timing was right, God brought clarity to what He had already said, and because I had documented it, I didn't miss the moment. That's what I call building a divine blueprint. When you start writing down the things God shows you over time, you begin to see patterns. You begin to see a strategy unfold. You start noticing that what God said last month connects to what's happening this month. You realize that the word you thought was for you last year is now meant for the person sitting across the table from you today. And it becomes clear that God's not just giving you random inspiration. He's laying out a long-term plan. Now here's the thing, when I write, I don't filter. I don't try to make it sound pretty. I don't edit it to make it Instagram ready. I just write, raw, real. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's just a word or a phrase that doesn't make sense until much later. But I've learned to trust the process. I've learned that God often speaks in seed form. And when I write it down, I'm planting that seed in a place where it can grow, not in a place where it can be forgotten. There have been moments when I've gone back through my journal or notes and found things God said that I didn't act on yet. But now they're relevant. Now they're urgent. That's when I know the season has shifted. That's when I know it's time to move. And because I documented what He said, I'm not scrambling for direction. I'm simply aligning with what was already spoken. So when you meet with God, don't just walk away and try to remember what you felt or thought. Treat it like the sacred transaction it is. Write it down, type it out, capture the details, because when you document divine direction, you're not just preserving a moment, you're stewarding a movement. Once the meeting is over, once you've prayed, listened, received, and documented, what comes next is the part where most people get stuck: execution. It's easy to be inspired in God's presence. It's powerful to receive a fresh word, a new direction, or confirmation about a decision. But the moment you walk out of that meeting, you're entering a new territory called obedience. This is where real faith shows up, not just in believing what God said, but in doing something about it. See, the kingdom doesn't operate on good intentions. It operates on obedience. God can give you $1 million idea, but if you don't act on it, it's not a blessing. It's a missed opportunity. He can give you a word that's meant to unlock a new season in your life, but if you hesitate because of fear or procrastination, you'll stay stuck in the same place with a full notebook and an empty life. Revelation without implementation is just spiritual entertainment. When God gives you an instruction, you don't need more confirmation. You need movement. You need to do the thing, even if it's small. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't make full sense yet. Every major breakthrough I've ever experienced came after a moment of obedience that didn't feel convenient. It rarely felt glamorous. Sometimes it felt risky, But I didn't wait until I had everything figured out. I just took the next step he told me to take, and every single time that step opened doors I couldn't see before I moved. I've learned that God doesn't usually give us the whole picture up front. He gives us enough to take the first step, enough to make the call, send the email, launch the thing, walk away from the wrong thing. Say yes to the right thing, but it's in the movement that clarity increases. It's in the action that strategy gets confirmed, because God blesses the steps, not the stagnation. He honors motion rooted in trust. There's a reason he said, "Faith without works is dead." You can have all the faith in the world, but if you're not willing to act on it, it won't produce anything. And let's be real. Sometimes we use waiting on God as a mask for disobedience. We say we're praying about it, but we've already gotten the answer. We're just scared to do it. But delayed obedience is still disobedience, and disobedience always delays destiny. I don't say that to scare you. I say it to stir you. Because I know what happens when you move in sync with what God has spoken. Doors open that no man can shut. Provision shows up from places you didn't expect. Divine connections start falling into place. And things that felt like struggles suddenly become strides. Not because it's easy, but because you're not walking alone anymore. You're walking in alignment. So when that business meeting with God ends, don't just go back to your routine. Don't let the inspiration fade into convenience. Make the call, send the proposal, write the plan, shift the schedule, set the boundary, release the old, embrace the new. Whatever he said, do that. Because obedience is the bridge between revelation and results.